I've never believed in haunted dolls, curses, or any of that paranormal nonsense. That stuff always felt like the plot of some cheap horror movie. But what happened to me and my sister during one summer changed everything. Our grandmother lived in a massive, very old wooden house out in rural Maine, the kind that creaks even when no one's walking, where the stairs moan at night and the fireplace groans when the wind rushes in. It was our first time spending the whole summer there. On the third day, while exploring the house, my sister opened the attic door. The staircase was narrow and dusty, coated with cobwebs. At the far end of the attic, behind old trunks and furniture covered with sheets, she found a padded blue box. Inside was a doll. Light blue dress, curly brown hair, glass eyes that didn't blink, and a small metal tag on her chest. Annabelline. We brought the doll down to our room. My sister was obsessed with her, instantly. It was like the doll had cast a spell on her. She wanted to sleep with Annabelline, talk to her, even eat meals with her sitting at the table. I found it weird, but figured it was just a kid being a kid. That night, the strange things started. The bedroom lights flickered in odd patterns. I thought it was just faulty wiring. Old house, old problems. But then, we heard something being dragged across the floor outside our door. We opened it. Nothing there, except small marks, like tiny feet had moved through the dust, trailing fabric behind them. My sister swore she had left the doll on the bookshelf, but there it was, on the floor, faced toward the wall. Each night after that got worse. The doll started showing up in places we didn't leave her. One time we found her inside the closet, with the door locked from the inside. The latch couldn't be shut that way, unless someone was in there. Another night, my sister woke up covered in bruises, as if someone had grabbed her tightly. She told me the doll would climb onto her bed and whisper in her ear at night. She said Annabelline wanted to play, but her games were cruel. One morning, we found drawings on the bedroom wall, done by a child's hand. Twisted figures, crying children, some being pulled by strings, others surrounded by black shadows. Our grandmother swore she'd never seen the doll before, but when we told her what was happening, she turned pale. After a lot of begging, she finally confessed. Many years ago, a little girl from our family died in that very house. She was her sister's daughter. The only thing left in her bedroom after the tragedy was that same doll. The death was ruled an accident, but our grandma always suspected something darker. Frightened, she made us seal the doll back in the box, melted wax over the lid, and sprinkled holy water on it. Then she buried it deep in the yard, under a twisted tree she said had never bloomed. We never saw the doll again, but sometimes my sister still wakes up in the middle of the night saying she hears whispers coming from the closet. And every time she does, the smell of burned wax fills the room. You know when something feels wrong from the start, but you ignore it because you think you're just being paranoid? That was me. I love thrift stores. Always have. I think every old object carries a story, a memory. I was in this hidden little shop in Ohio when I found the doll. She was on a low shelf, a bit dusty, with a smudged face. But something about her made me stop. The shop owner told me no one wanted that doll. Said she'd been returned 3 different times. People said she looked back. I laughed it off. I mean, come on. But I bought her anyway. $5. Took her home and placed her on a shelf in my living room, between some books. That night, my cat refused to enter the room. Just stood at the door, staring at the doll. His fur bristled, like he saw something I didn't. Then, things started getting weird. First, the sounds, footsteps in the hallway when I was alone. Then loud thuds from the living room. But when I checked, everything was in place. Except the doll. She was always slightly different, tilted more to the side, leaning forward. One evening, I came home from work and found one of my books ripped open. Pages torn, scattered on the floor. The book? It was about exorcisms. A gag gift from a friend. I was shaken. But it wasn't until the nightmares started that I realized this was something serious. Almost every night, I'd dream I was sitting on my couch, and the doll would slowly move across the room until she sat beside me. She'd turn her head and whisper things I couldn't understand. It wasn't English. It wasn't any language I knew. But the tone? It was threatening. Then came the night I'll never forget. I woke up around 3:13 a.m. to the sound of footsteps in my house. I grabbed my phone and crept downstairs. When I got to the living room, the doll was on my couch, not fallen over, not leaning, sitting upright, legs crossed, eyes fixed on the doorway. As I walked closer, she just toppled over, like nothing happened. The next day, I went back to the shop to return her, but it was closed. Sign on the door said, "Permanently shut." I searched online. No record of the store. It was like it never existed. I tried to burn the doll. The fire wouldn't catch. The smoke blackened her, but she didn't burn. Now, she's locked in my basement, in a wooden box, chained shut. And still, every once in a while, I hear knocking. Always at 3:13. I never really believed in creepy doll stories, but what happened to me changed that. I work as an antique furniture restorer in Hamburg, and one morning I got a request to restore something different. An old wax doll. The owner was an elderly woman living alone, and she told me the doll had been in the living room since she was a kid. Nobody in her family really liked the doll, but no one dared to get rid of it because her grandmother called it a family treasure. When I started working on the doll, I noticed how well made it was, almost perfect. But somehow, it gave me an uneasy feeling. It felt like those glass eyes were watching me wherever I went in the room. Over the next few days, strange things started to happen. I left the doll on a shelf in my workshop, and some mornings I'd find it in a different spot, or with a small melted wax stain I didn't remember being there. I thought maybe I was just tired, imagining things. One night, I went back to the workshop to grab some tools, and just as I was about to leave, I caught a reflection in the window. The doll seemed to be looking outside, but the shelf was on the opposite side of the room. That gave me chills. I decided to put the doll in a locked box so I wouldn't get distracted. The next day, the lady came to pick up the restored doll, but before leaving, she shared a story that really freaked me out. When she was a child, sometimes she'd wake up in the middle of the night and see the doll sitting on a chair, like it was awake, staring at her. Her grandmother told her it was just her imagination, but the truth is, that doll seemed to have a presence. After hearing that, I realized maybe it wasn't just any old doll. I returned the doll and never heard about it again. But to this day, I find myself thinking about that strange, almost human gaze from that wax doll. Sometimes I catch myself staring at my workshop, wondering if she's come back to visit me. When I moved into an old house in Salem, Massachusetts, I didn't expect the basement to hold such a disturbing secret. Within the first few weeks, I found a porcelain doll hidden inside a dusty old box behind some furniture. She was beautiful, with mohair hair and glass eyes that looked incredibly real. But there was something about her that made me uneasy. It felt like the doll wasn't meant to be there, so forgotten. In the nights that followed, I started hearing almost inaudible whispers coming from the basement, like someone was trying to talk to me. One time, I went down to check and found the doll lying on the floor, her hair slightly messy. I was sure I had carefully placed her inside the box. The feeling of being watched kept growing. Sometimes I noticed a strange smell, a mix of burnt candle wax and an old floral scent, seeming to come from that doll. Over time, I noticed the doll's eyes seemed to follow my movements around the room, especially at night when the house was silent. One early morning, I woke up to a noise in the basement and, looking out my bedroom window, I saw the doll standing at the top of the stairs, staring right at my door as if waiting for something. I researched the doll's origin and found out it belonged to a girl who lived in the house in the 19th century. The child mysteriously disappeared, and they say the doll was the only thing found after she vanished. Some locals believe the girl's spirit is trapped inside the toy, trying to communicate with anyone willing to listen. Since then, the doll remains in the basement, and I can't shake the feeling that it still holds secrets. And somehow, it's watching me, waiting for me to uncover the truth lost in time. I was living in an old house in New Orleans, Louisiana, one of those buildings that carry history in every corner and every creak. It was in the attic of that house that I found a rag doll, dressed in handmade clothes, worn by time, but with a face so vivid it seemed almost human. Its button eyes had a strange shine that seemed to change with the light, and something inside me said that doll was different from the others. In the first days, I left the doll on top of a box, just as an old, curious keepsake. But soon, I started noticing strange little things. The doll wasn't where I had left it, showing up in different corners of the attic, sometimes facing me, as if it were watching me. There was no logical explanation because the attic was isolated, and no one else lived with me in the house. At night, I heard faint whispers, so low I could barely make out the words. It was almost impossible to tell if I was dreaming or if someone was really trying to communicate. One early morning, I woke up with my heart racing, feeling a cold chill running down my spine. I decided to go up to the attic to understand what was going on. When I turned on the flashlight, the light reflected in the doll's eyes, which were on the floor in a position I had never left it. As I approached, I saw it was holding a small rolled-up note in its lap. My hands trembled as I unrolled the paper, revealing a message written in childlike handwriting. "Help me, please." Fear and curiosity took over me at the same time. I researched the house's history and discovered that a girl named Annabelle lived there in the early 20th century. She mysteriously disappeared, and her doll was the only thing found in her room after she vanished. Some old neighbors said they heard crying and giggling coming from the attic, and many believed the girl's spirit got trapped in that doll, trying to warn whoever entered the house about a truth no one ever knew. Since then, every time I go up to the attic, I feel like someone is watching me, and sometimes the whispers become clearer, calling my name. I avoid going up there, but I can't shake the feeling that the doll is waiting for me to discover what happened to Annabelle and help the girl finally rest in peace.